We will be fabricating a dorsal blocking orthosis. So for this orthosis, typically you would make it for a flexor tendon repair, which is what we will be doing today. So we will be positioning the wrist in just slight extension, and then the digits in the intrinsic plus position. So we're going to make the pattern first, which will go on the dorsal aspect. So take your paper towel and position it accordingly. We want it to extend down about 2/3 the length of the forearm. So I will first mark that. And then as for width, we're gonna go about halfway on the forearm, half the width of the forearm and the wrist. So extend that up. And also on the hand and the digits. And then as for length, you want to make sure that it covers the tips of the digits. So you want to extend that up far enough so the digits are included. And we won't be including the thumb, so I'm going to leave that out of the orthosis. So when you are finished, you will have basically a rectangle like this. Because the orthosis lies on the dorsal aspect of the hand, wrist, and forearm, you do want to pad the ulnar head. So we're going to pad that before we fabricate the orthosis. When the material is ready, you can line up the material on the dorsal aspect of the hand, wrist, and forearm. Again, we are pretending that this patient has a flexor tendon injury, so we'll be positioning the wrist in about 25 degrees of extension, the MPs in about 40 to 60 degrees of flexion, and the IPs in extension. One tricky thing with this orthosis is that it tends to slide. So a couple tips that you can do to help prevent that is you can tag it on the volar aspect of the wrist, which is what I'm going to do, or you can also use an ACE bandage to wrap. And just make sure it extends beyond the tips of the fingers. And then at the MP joints, in order to get the right angle, sometimes you have to make a seam here. So I'm just going to pinch that, and then I will trim when I'm finished. And also, whenever fabricating this, you want the wrist in a little bit of extension, like I said, but you want to make sure they don't deviate ulnarly or radially. Once your material has cooled, you can mark it for trimming. So again, we wanted about 2/3 the length of the forearm. And I can maybe trim just a little bit here. And then half the width of the forearm. So I will mark the sides. Half the width of the hand and the digits as well. So I'm going to mark the sides there. And then just make sure it extends beyond the tips of the fingers. You don't want it too short. And my length on this one is just right. Here's the orthosis after trimming. First, I trim the sides of the forearm, hand, and digits. Then I cut off the seams and then sealed them really well with the heat gun. For the straps, you'll have one strap just proximal to the wrist, one around the forearm, one that goes through the first web space on the volar aspect of the hand, and then one on the digits. And the strap on the digits is roughly around the PIP joints in P2, and it does follow the natural angle of the digits. Here's the final product of the dorsal blocking orthosis. So we'll have one strap around the wrist, one around the forearm, one that goes through the first web space on the volar aspect of the hand, and then one around the digits. So on the volar aspect, typically a wider strap around the digits is better because it covers more surface area and it allows for appropriate positioning of the digits.